We're working. All right, May 25th, 2017, SIG scalability meeting. Engage.
All right. So topics for today so far, we have the configuration targets, and Ken wanted to talk about events and just a PSA for 183. I don't think there's anything other than just a PSA. Is there any other topics, or are there any other topics?
If anyone has had chance to read the doc about SLIs, SLOs, we can talk about it. If not, I can give a short update on it.
I think a short update would be great.
How do we want to work this? PSA, Wojtek, events, then configuration doc? Because configuration doc's going to be the long tail, right?
We should go shortest to longest then, huh?
Sounds good.
Right.
Mine's probably medium, I would say.
So Wojtek, you want? Is there anything to say other than install 183?
I don't think so. It's mostly I have a PR. It has some failing test which I didn't understood yet. But yes, basically we are just migrating to 1.8.3 and solve the performance issues that we have, because that's something that I already tested. So yeah.
Okay. So you heard 183 fixes the problem. It just hasn't been merged into head yet. Is there an issue you can link to for that?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll link the issue in the doc. Who wants to MC the rest of this stuff? I put it in the doc. So.
Oh, all right. I had my doc up here, but Tim, you're so good at the MCing. We like it when you do it. Okay, let's do. Should we do SLI?
Okay, yeah. So basically, unless someone has questions or suggestions, the short update is that I'm going to start talking with interested SIGs about particular SLI suggestions. So basically, the high-level plan is that we are first going to agree on some set of SLIs that we think are important and that cover most of the system that we would like to be covered. Then instrument the system with that will somehow measure where we are with this SLIs, and then based on that, for the most important ones, introduce the SLOs at some point when we know where we are or where we are targeting and stuff like that. But SLOs, defining the thresholds for SLOs is basically the last step here.
This sounds like a great plan. You anything on the tip of your head that you're thinking of?
Nothing special. I'm going to start discussing with networking team and networking SIG about the suggestions about networking things, and with API machinery about how to refine the existing SLOs about API call latency. That's
the networking SIG is going to be weird because there's so many configurations and things that people are putting into there now. So I'd be interested in feedback. I don't necessarily want to sign up for anything else. I have enough things I'm signed up for. I just want to know the results.
Sure.
Namely, as IPVS comes online.
Yeah, I think that whether we have IPVS or not is and slightly, or it will affect what SLOs we can, what threshold we can define, but it probably doesn't affect what exactly we would like to measure. That's my.
I think
I think if you want to measure service throughput and time to life, that will matter, because time to life versus IP tables versus IPVS, that's just dramatically different at scale.
Oh yeah, so I mean the value of the metric will be different, but the metric shouldn't depend on it.
Yeah, I agree.
So the initial the first step was to define this metric and instrument the code, and then yes, I agree that with IPVS it will be faster or should be faster significantly, but it's mostly a matter of putting the correct number based on it, not about defining the exact metric that we would like to measure.
So is the purpose of the SLIs to publish those metrics as part of the release cycle?
I think we won't manage to do it for 1.7 because I'm on vacation for whole June, mostly. I'm 1 week in US and then 3 weeks on vacation. So it's mostly 1 week that's left for me. But yeah, I think it doesn't necessarily be part of the release. I think we can announce it on any time.
Okay.
Yeah. So if anyone has any suggestions, what should we measure and what isn't in the doc, I'm happy to discuss it further.
All right. Did you have a doc? Was there a doc? Did you maybe do it last time? Is there a doc that you're working on presently, or is that a TBD?
Oh, yeah, yes, there is a doc. I think I've shared it with Kubernetes Dev and I shared it with the scalability SIG, but I can also put it into notes from this.
It's different than the SLO doc, right?
No, it's the same.
Oh, same doc. Okay, it's the same doc is in there. I thought maybe you were doing a separate one.
No, there probably will be. There potentially may be another doc when we will have some agreements on concrete items, but nothing. There isn't anything else for now.
Okay. Great. Should we move on to Ken and the event discussion?
Sure. To make sure everybody can see that link that I put up there. I talked a little bit about this last week. We were talking somewhat about events and how it was in relation to etcd and the load that was being put on it. The document has somewhat changed since then. The goal is no longer to replace etcd or to do anything like that, but basically what we're thinking we really want out of Kubernetes right now is the ability to get an unfiltered stream of events as they happen, rather than having to query the etcd store and watch for objects to get created and deleted. Because the objects that get stored in etcd for events are lossy. So if an event happens that looks similar to a previous event, an event might get updated instead of created. There might be a bumped timestamp, but you don't get a raw access to that stream. So the proposal here is to move the aggregation and compression of events out of the client and put it on the server, and have the event stream that gets sent to the server be a raw kind of send all events no matter what. And on the server end, the kind of enhancement that would be at play here is that you could then tee off that information to an external store that can ingest it and do analytics on it or whatever you want to do. It's part of a monitoring system. And the events that come in would be uncompressed. They would be duplicated. They wouldn't be, there would be no attempts to dedupe them, which would make it a lot easier to integrate into existing systems. This is my first proposal, so I'm not really sure if, I'm pretty sure this has been discussed before. I think Tim had brought that up, that it had been discussed before. But I guess I'm looking at it from a naive point of view, with fresh eyes, is this, what were the reasons why this wasn't kind of approached last time? Or is this even the right SIG where we have the right audience to be able to ask that question?
So I had this discussion about why we did it actually client side last week with Daniel from Google, Daniel Smith. And we had exactly the same conclusion. We don't know why it happened. So it seems that it was just someone who pushed it without discussing it wider. So
yeah, I guess I would say I have the appetite to go work on this, and I need to. I've been working with Tim on figuring out the best path to make sure that I don't get blindsided in a PR that says no, we can't do this. We had this idea the whole time, and here's why. I looked at the original document, and I wasn't able to find really great reasons why it has to be done in the client. So
I think there is other than the fact that the audience here is especially interested in this topic, I'm not sure that this is the right SIG for it. So
I think the executioners would be like Merrick, me, and Ken, and Wojtek, but we need to get sign off on SIG API machinery as well, right? So that's the only other place that we need to get sign off on. We're the executioners pretty much, so.
Yeah, but like also, I guess, instrumentation SIG or whatever, like the people who deal with events.
They deal with the things. I don't know what they do. I mean, I've been to several of those meetings trying to understand exactly what they do. But I think API machinery is the one that holds the keys to making allowing us to do this. We can do it once we have buy-in from them.
Yeah, I agree that API machine, like it might be good to let SIG instrumentation know that we are planning it, but I think like sign off from API machinery team.
I think it was originally planned to be, well, Tim had originally suggested this SIG because it was in relation to potentially looking at a different store for events than etcd. But really, I think the usability is really a big win to have events in etcd because you can still query them as if they're API objects. You can say like, give me this pod and all of the events that happened with it, and it's just the same thing. It's just, we still want to have another option for people who want uncompressed events sent somewhere. So
I think if we felt like that this was a project that was directly needed in order to support scaling to a bigger cluster, that it would make more sense to be here. But this feels to me more like really welcome general purpose operational monitoring goodness.
Well, not really. Like there's, like we were discussing like a number of things around like making the debugging of performance regression or generally performance easier. We looked into the tracing, which turned out not to be really possible because of a different model. And like the next idea is to actually like improve events, right? And this is exactly what this SIG it's about, like making like debugging regressions of performance, right?
I think that this topic's been around the SIG for so long, it probably feels like a natural home. If one of the other SIGs wants to really feel strongly about it, I'm not sure that we could really, I'm not sure we could really make the case properly, but if I'm willing to be supportive of having this be the home SIG for this, that's especially if people are working on it anyway.
I think we just need the checkbox from SIG API machinery. So, and I think we could probably discuss it there, which is not next week, but the week after, I think. And then start to put up proposals for the next release cycle, because we're not going to do anything now. The best thing we can do now is get the timestamp change in.
Hopefully, well, not changing, but addition. But yes, like we can't change timestamp.
Okay.
Historically, in terms of not being blindsided, Tim, you probably know this better than I would want to make sure it's been run by Brian Grant and David Oppenheimer, since they might have architectural concerns. And so if I think of David Oppenheimer, I think of SIG scheduling. I think you are there. I
don't think David is.
David's not the only person I need buy-in from. I would think the two people are Clayton and Daniel.
Okay.
Those are the two. Daniel's been the pusher on certain ideas regarding events. So I think Daniel's the key stakeholder. I think Clayton would be like, "Yep, good."
Yeah.
So
also, Brian, like this. Also, like I don't know if I know everyone else aware. Like also, like I am I'm in the process of writing a proposal of how we want to update events, like not only timestamp, which is clearly needed, but also like making the object as a sentence part, not as a Kubernetes object, an explicit part of event. Because like right now we have an involved object, which is, for example, replication controller, and we put pods in a message for some obscure reason, instead of like having like explicit object of a sentence as a part of the objects of the Kubernetes object. There's too many objects in the sentence, right? So like to explicitly have the second thing in the event, like which is, well, another object or API object or whatever component or anything. And then actually like the dedupe will get also better because like currently I look into like what is being deduped and except like trivial hot loops, which exactly the same and different only by timestamp. The only dedupes I was able to find was actually replication controllers, replica sets and so on, creating pods. So like if the replica set created like whatever 20 pods, it will have like only one event that this replica created like those pods, like a pod, and with like as we dedupe on message and like the information of the pod is in a message, like it will be all compressed in a single event. So that's the only places we dedupe now.
Okay, I see what you're doing. It'd be nice to, when you have the proposal, I'd be happy. We could probably combine these two event things into like one comprehensive event proposal.
Yes, yeah. Well, we were off for last week. Like I was off for the last 2 days, so like I wasn't able to do it. But like I hope I will write it tomorrow.
Okay.
My other suggestion would be to make sure you run some portion of this by SIG node or whomever owns the pod lifecycle event generator.
Okay.
What pod lifecycle? Oh, like so like the play. Okay, yes. So node for events for yes.
Yeah. Every time I deal with SIG node though, like there's.
I have a couple of PRs I need to run by SIG node anyway, also related to events. So I'll probably talk about this as well.
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, the only reason I bring up SIG scheduling is like that's the only concrete use case I can think of today where like I have to use events to find out why pod failed to schedule.
Oh no, by far no.
The kubelet, the big one in my mind is the kubelet events because I want to know that my app died. Like,
the scheduler. The scheduler has actually totally been fixed. We fixed that in the 1.6 cycle. Like there used to be a ridiculous number of events that were generated. And Jay and I deduped that as part of a histogram. Now it's actually in the pod status field. So it's part of the pod status. You will get the actual reason why it didn't schedule. And you'll get a histogram information of an event of all the things that didn't match, right? So before you used to get like hundreds. If you had one failing pod that failed to schedule and it had like 1,000 nodes, you would get 1,000 events, right? And that was crazy. But that's been fixed.
You are my hero. Thank you so much.
That was done in 1.6.
Very good. All right, moving on to configuration targets. Excellent. All right. Thanks for all the feedback on the docs. I guess a special hello to Eswar, who I think this is your first time attending, I'm guessing.
That's right. This is the first time. I've been lurking here because I want to get the pulse of the meeting to understand what's going on here. So
yeah, sure. Yeah. So Eswar's with AWS, and he and his team were kind enough to give me some feedback on the configuration discussion. I also reached out to the Azure team and got some feedback from them directly. I think we get great feedback from the Google folks, of course, on the fly here all the time. Yeah. So I think we have that covered. The other thing is I also Packet is they're a bare metal provider, is getting more involved in the CNCF, and so the CNCF folks introduced me to Packet, so I had a chat with them as well. So I've been getting pretty decent feedback from a variety of kind of platforms and providers on this topic. I would like to, I do want to make a short notice at the community meeting today because I want to make sure that if there's any other providers that are interested and involved, that they can touch base and we can try to figure out how to get them into the doc. So there's that. I think it looked to me like there was mostly informational comment on the doc so far, so we can go over it if you want, but what I'm kind of thinking is that we're probably about to the point where I should get it out of a Word doc and into a more formal location. Wojtek, I think you had an idea about that. It was on my list of things to bug you, where you think content should go.
It's getting
kind of
like the location of the doc, right?
Well, I could just we could just add it to the SLO or to the main page, but it's kind of getting long, and it feels like it ought to be a subsection. But I didn't know if you had an opinion.
No, I think that we should put it in the same directory, like under SIG scalability, but I think it should be a separate doc with a link from main page or whatever. Like, I think, yeah, I definitely think it should be a separate doc. I don't have like.
Okay.
I think this doc will be linked from the SLO doc or something like that. Or
I think that's the right way to do it, is put a link in the SLO doc to it as a sort of more detailed information here and forward on that basis.
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay. I will work on that. I don't really think there was much controversial in the comments. I think we spent a fair bit of time on 3-node versus 5-node in the last session, and then those comments came up again in the discussion. So maybe it's an indication I need to spend a little bit, put a few more words into explaining the rationale.
Yeah, sorry, Bob. I wasn't here last time around last week, so I didn't get to be part of that discussion. So it's probably me driving that.
Well, like I said, you may have noticed in my response to the comments, your suggestion was actually what my first version of the proposal looked like. And then after a bunch of discussion, we decided that it made sense. I don't think there's any resistance, by the way, to having more configurations tested. We were just trying to figure out, moving from the single node configs to an end node config, what was the one next most useful step we could take. And I think we felt like 5 was probably going to be it. So. Especially for very large clusters, right?
Well, well, I guess by that definition, large would just be 3, and then very large would be 5.
No, I think. I think Tim was one of the ones that was a strong advocate for 5, and I think part of it was, I'll say, anecdotal evidence that the very large operators tend to run with 5 anyway, and it's mostly about making sure that the failure during upgrade scenario is covered thoroughly.
Yeah, if you're running 5, or if you're running a 5,000 node cluster and you're doing it on-prem and not necessarily in a cloud environment, which has the auto recovery, you'd pretty much be bananas to not use 5.
Pretty much be bananas. I think I need to figure out how to work that phrase into my doc. So, okay, and then I think the other question in there was I was just assuming Wojtek, that you were using the same node types for hosting the kubemarks, and I'll have to create a new table for that. I think we ought to give some guidance. It feels like it would be useful for folks who want to repeat this to give some guidance as to how to run the large kubemark clusters.
Yes, that's fine. So basically, we have. For this master node, we are using 64 core because any other is like too small. And for nodes, you can use whatever you want. You can also use 64 core. It's just probably 64 is maybe too much because like basically we are packing a bunch of those hollow nodes into a single node from the base cluster, and like we have, I think, on average, like 10 hollow nodes per core or something like that, which means that with 100 pods per node limitation that is hard-coded somewhere, which you can obviously override, but that's what we at least officially support. It means that like something around 8 core machines for nodes is something.
Are the kubemark machines CPU mount at that point, or? Guessing they would be, but you can be wrong easily.
They are.
You mean master or nodes?
The machines running the kubemark. The hollow
like what, master kubemark or like kubemark nodes?
Hollow nodes.
The hollow nodes.
They are not CPU, like they are not completely full, but they are close to be full, I think.
Okay. Proxy is kind of
mostly kube proxy. Like I think they are they are using more memory than CPU, and it's kube proxy or hollow proxy actually, which is like using a lot of memory.
Okay. Right. Well, in any case, I think you put a suggested machine type in your comments, so I'll update the doc to reflect.
Yeah.
All right. How often are you running real nodes? That was another question that came up in the.
Not often. Like I think we didn't run any since 1.6 was released.
So like once a release cycle-ish?
I would say so. Yeah.
More than one release because like usually some problems appear, but like there's one time when we start running and until we fix everything we run it.
One good run, you're saying?
Something like that, yeah.
All right.
Is that something that we want to move towards? Is having more real cluster runs, or is there a reason like I guess just convenience or isolation is why we do the emulated?
Like big clusters are like extremely expensive and like it takes ages to run.
It's just time and money.
Yes.
I mean, ideally, I know the CNCF cluster got pulled, right? Ideally, we would use that as a test bed, right? But there is no shared test bed infrastructure unless the CNCF wants to like pool for it.
Right.
But in an ideal world, it would be a shared environment, not just Google fronting the bill, right?
There is, and with my CNCF hat on, I would say there is still some interest in trying to figure out how to pull together a cluster story there.
Well, but like we also need to make sure that there is not as much red tape as it was.
It was a pain. There were so many problems. Like Sebastian can describe them too as well. But a lot of the gear was like unvetted, unburned in. The drivers weren't even proper. Like us setting it all up, just to provision took a vast majority of the time. Then we finally got benchmarks out at the end.
Like the first couple times around, the firmware was an issue and the controllers even.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think Joe Beta and I both were involved in the very early versions of that and gave a bunch of advice about how it should be managed. And I think if at least some of our recommendations had been followed, it would have been a lot easier to use. So that means I'm tending to get sucked back into some of these efforts when they come the next time around. So anyway, I'd say probably my activities in that area are more like salesy in terms of seeing what other orgs might be willing to support something like that.
I just have another quick question, I guess, on having dedicated Etsy nodes versus having the whole control plane on one single node. Is that like another cost thing, or why was that design decision having everything on one like really big host?
I think it's the easy place to start, and I think the other thing is that that's close to the Google production configuration, and but not everyone runs that way. So I think that this is part of kind of supporting different models for building clusters like this.
That's what I gathered from the doc. I just want to double check.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
It's actually pretty impressive that we get the scalability we do out of a single node at this point, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's impressive from where we've come from, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily impressive because it's impressive.
Oh, kill my joy, man.
Is anyone actually sure that we'll get more from bigger number of nodes? It will actually get slower, right?
I think our expectation is that it's less, that the 5-node config is not going to perform as well, but that's really important for us to know for production configs that need to do that. So we want to make sure that that the performance hit isn't too big, and if there's something, we may find something that needs some attention in the course of that.
I'm absolutely certain we're going to uncover stuff. Like 1,000%.
Yeah. But realistically, nobody's running a large scale single node, so.
Well, that's not true.
That isn't true.
Well, they do at Google because they have the reboot of the machine and they're still safe, right? But other people for on-prem are not running large scale single
Like in cloud, there is no reason whatsoever to run multiple masters.
Well, it depends on your downtime of your master. Right?
Yes.
Well, if
It's
you
not
can,
only about cloud, it's about like, for example, persistent storage and stuff like that. Without persistent storage, we would be running like multiple.
Oh yes, yeah, but like I assume that all the cloud is
What kind
persistent
of
storage.
setup do you guys have with one single, like you just have two, like one split, like no?
With our AWS customers, we recommend multi-AZ deployments. But you'll also note in the document, I specifically excluded as a testing configuration from scalability because it introduces yet one more variable. But generally on a cloud provider with a 5 etcd large cluster environment, it's going to be a multi-AZ kind of setup, and you're going to want to be prepared for that.
Yeah, well, yes. Like the question is, of course, like if you want to have multi-AZ done by like HA master or done by federation, but like that's another discussion, and I don't think it's clear.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Yeah, so I was attempting to, like, you do have this like next big step we need to make, which is to get to a multi-node cluster, and I think I made notes for all these different topic areas like multi-AZ and some other things that are areas for definitely for future research as we have the time and the willingness of the community to engage in it. But the next big step, I think, is pretty clear.
I think long term, I would ideally like to have the same tooling be generally available for folks to be able to configure and deploy this environment. So that way it's a shared infra tooling, not just like magic kubuppery, which no one else uses other than Google. Because the kubup scriptery is kind of like a wasteland that no one but Google maintains that. So like everyone else has their own tooling. And if we unify some of the tooling, that would be an ideal case, because then we say like we did A, B, C, D, and we produce these values on this provider.
Yep. I think that's pretty clearly SIG cluster lifecycle territory.
I know I'm wearing two hats right now. Just trying to push that.
But our tooling group here, I've been asking them to track this document because we want to make sure that the tooling support that we have will support these cluster sizes and cluster configurations so that we're capable of running these tests too. Anyway, well, we're actually over time. Any other closing thoughts? Anyone? All right, thanks everybody. We're done.
Thanks. See you.
See you guys later.